Live streaming is on.
Hello, Global Theater. My name is Gerry Fialka. It's August 20, 2021. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Clinton Ignatoff, who will be helping us and joining us in a while. Thank you, Clinton. And Roy Benjamin, that is so nice of you to join us. Thank you so much. Where are you calling in from, Roy?
Manhattan, actually on 12th Street in Manhattan in the East Village. Mm-hmm.
How nice. Mm-hmm. Roy, the first question is, what's the best thing for a human being?
What's the best thing for a human being? Well, I could be trite and say to be happy, and I would say to have good relationships with lots of different people. Positive relationships.
That's good. Mm-hmm. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
I guess I pursue happiness, but I do. With the wake, I do spend a lot of my time pursuing meaning, and that makes me happy. So they're connected.
Good. What's your favorite form of information, Roy? How it comes into you?
Definitely reading.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you grow up a reader because your mom and dad were an example? They were telling you to read, or on your own?
They didn't really tell me. Actually, I was really into comic books. I had this huge comic book collection, and then when I went through some angst and I discovered Dostoevsky, I got rid of all my comic books, which was a real mistake because they'd be worth a hell of a lot right now. Like the first Spider-Man, the first Fantastic Four, the first Superman annual. They seemed too lowbrow to me then. But
how cool! So Roy, what year were you born?
1953.
That's the exact year I was born. Cool! I love that year.
Yeah. What's your birthday?
3/15/53, the Ides of March.
Ah, yeah. I'm 4/23, so you're
4/23.
You're a month older than I am, huh?
So back to information, Roy. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
I think to survive, and I think that's why that there are advances. Every generation I think advances in certain ways, maybe backslides in other ways, but I guess you could say the DNA is all about transmitting information, and I think that's part of what keeps things going. Mm-hmm.
So that's almost implying, if I get this correct, the next question is this need or want to collect information more innate or more invented by humans?
I think it was invented by humans. I don't, that's making the step from animal to man, as they say. It seems to be that there was some kind of invention going on, but maybe it was instinctual. I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, thank you. Because that's what I'm asking for. Not like, it's more like we're after your hunch, your intuition, and saying I don't know, or that's totally valid. But do thoughts create emotions?
Yes, definitely. Well, I think especially, I think that they create emotions. You can get into thought patterns that reinforce negative emotions, or I guess the opposite is also true. You can hold grudges, or you can develop empathy. So I think thoughts create emotions.
Yeah, I like that word empathy a lot. And I guess you've already answered this, but in a way, I'll repeat it. Is thinking more innate or more invented?
Well, certainly thinking with words is it seems like it's a human invention. Uh, but I think animals think, with, without words. So,
Right. That's good. So how would you fill in the blank? I don't know what I think until I
see what I say? That's a famous. Uh,
till I see what I say.
yeah, well, that's a famous quote from I think Dorothy Parker. I don't know. How do I know what I think till I see what I say? So.
Oh, that's good because that's funny because Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I've written it. And
Mm-hmm.
McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I've said it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So she's really, morphing the senses by saying, see what I say. Seeing is an eye action, saying is an ear action.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you have to hear what you're thinking after you say it. Yeah. So.
It's like McLuhan called it sense ratio shifting, like going back to the Irish in Finnegan's Wake. When Irish eyes are smiling,
Mm-hmm.
well, it's like metaphor. Can an eye actually smile?
Mm-hmm. Well, he also talks about an ear being ear-sighted. That he was, I think, Shem was ear-sighted. So it's like the eye develops an ear, and actually, it's weird because that was a got an old idea from a Jewish exegete. I guess the whole idea that the Greeks were ocular-centric and the Jews were more audio-centric, and I guess Joyce has the meeting. Jew Greek meets Greek Jew, and extremes meet, the eye and the ear.
That is good. Thank you. So back to thinking. Can humans think without language?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they talk about baseball players when they're in a zone, and really when they're really in the zone, their mind is completely silent, and they're not telling themselves what to do, but they have a clarity where they're able to react to things more efficiently. Yeah.
Wow. So are they acting on intuition, impulse, hunch then?
I guess it all is connected. I guess that in the great athletes, I guess that connection between intuition and thought, I mean, it gets developed and melded in some ways, as in the same way musicians or artists.
But also I'll turn to probably someone you respected growing up, like I did, Bridget Bardot. She says, I don't think when I make love. Like, good luck.
Thank God. Well, yeah.
Yeah. But you think, the thing is, you would think, well, I'm going through this sensual experience. Can I get rid of my monkey brain and my thoughts and just surrender to the sensuality of it all? Who could ever do that? I mean, can you live?
That's the purpose of drugs or purpose of meditation. It seems like it's to try to get rid of the monkey mind. That's yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's Chomsky thinks we're hardwired for language, if I got him right. And he said that language is not just words. It's culture, tradition, unification of community, a whole history that creates what community is. How do you cope when language doesn't work, when it breaks down?
Well, I guess language can break down, in that kind of Orwellian way where lies become the truth in a social sense. I mean, that's one form of breakdown. Or propaganda that I think that leads to great destruction and misery. But do you mean in the sense of like aphasia, losing the ability to speak?
Well, actually, all the questions you put them into the context you want. That's an interesting context, but I'm just saying, in general, when language breaks down, when it doesn't work,
Well, from a Freudian perspective, I guess sometimes when language breaks down, like the Freudian slip, you make a mistake, and you don't. There's some mistake in grammar or finding the right word or substituting the wrong word, but actually that's closer to the truth than your maybe your brainwashed way of looking at things.
Wow, that's deep. You bring up a lot of good points, Roy. I really appreciate it. You really get what we're doing. So you said the word propaganda, and Jacques Ellul influenced McLuhan a lot, and he said propaganda is just culture in action. Would you go along with this? What I've read, which could be totally me misinterpreting it, is that Western culture demonizes propaganda, and like European culture doesn't demonize it as much. It just says, let's process, let's cope with what it is, culture in action.
Yeah, well, I guess if you can see it as propaganda, then you're not taken in by it. I guess the problem is when you get lots of people who are taken in by the propaganda, and that it becomes a social and political force.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a heavy word. So, does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're detecting it, or are we creating it?
Yeah, I don't think the brain creates consciousness. I think it's a way of experiencing consciousness, or rerouting consciousness in different ways. I don't think it creates it, but
yeah. Well, this is, in general, your observations of other humans in your life. Do you think people are more feeling beings or more thinking beings?
I mean, I think it depends on the person. I think that those are two poles. Some people go in one direction, some people go the other. Some people are able to integrate the two. But yeah, I mean, I would say musicians are more feeling beings than intellectuals. So I don't think you can generalize. Although I know. I think John Lennon said intellectuals can't see or feel anything. I think he was.
Did he say that? Wow.
He said it about Nabokov, Nabokov said he hated music, and John Lennon said intellectuals can't see or feel anything.
Wow. So he was reacting. Mm-hmm. That was amazing. John was reacting to Nabokov's comment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's good. Thank you for teaching me that. Now, here's two Alan Turing questions.
I'm not a robot, is that?
Not. He's the guy. Alan Turing is
I know who he is.
The Turing test guy. 1950s. He said, "Is thinking a function of the soul?"
Yes.
That was good. His second question is, can machines think?
Well, that's I guess that's the whole problem. I think machines can think, and then do machines have souls? That's the next question. And would a thinking machine create its own soul? So that's when it gets kind of science fiction-y and scary.
Yeah. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Light.
Audre Lorde, the poet, says you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer responded, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it seems to me that I mean, there's some kind of the pandemic of misinformation and distortion of truth and reality. Yeah, what tool? I mean, it seems like the computer was the great new tool that was given to or created by humanity. But I guess everything has its downside, and if it increases power, it increases it for good and evil.
Yeah. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Well, actually, I worry more and more about things, like global warming, and I'm thinking, is this really the end times that we're living through right now? And I'm on the fifth floor in Manhattan, and is it going to be like the fall of the Taliban? Say, well, that's 10 years away before New York's underwater, and then suddenly, well, actually, we miscalculated. It's actually tomorrow. It's happening. So I don't know.
Well, it seems like you have a good sense of humor. Do you think worry has a service and a disservice? Like,
yeah, both. I mean, it's certainly if you don't want to be controlled by your mind. I mean, I think that's like an extreme case. When you can't turn off that worry, you kind of become the effect of your mind. But I think. Worrying also when there are a lot of things you got to keep in your head at the same time or do, then it's probably a good thing.
Are you more an optimist or more a pessimist?
I think I'm I think I'm developing more from a pessimist to more of an optimist. But I always I always thought I was a pessimist because my father was an optimist. He would never ride in a train that was with the seat facing the wrong way because he always wanted to feel like he was going forward. So I would purposely go backward. I don't know. So
that's good. Well, McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and receiving the hidden psychic effects of our inventions. Like, you brought up the computer. How does the computer really shape our behavior? So we don't know. We just sort of embrace the invention, and then it becomes part of us, and we don't really generally understand how it shaped our behavior. Say the car, electricity, spoken word, printed word, electronic word. So McLuhan said, in learning from Pound, that we can look to the artists and they will broadcast these hidden psychic effects so that we can learn how to cope with what we don't like. But McLuhan was also saying we still ignore the hidden psychic effects, even though we can turn to the artist and broadcast them. Why do you think humans still ignore them?
I think when you're immersed in it, you have no perspective on what's actually happening in terms of what McLuhan said. The ratio of the senses changing. There's no way you can really get outside and gauge that. It seems like in retrospect, people will know in a few generations what computers. This generation growing up with TV. Computers and the whole the whole idea of being able to record everything that this is I think unprecedented in terms of how humans experience reality, that every moment can be captured and replayed, and music can be captured, which is great, but then there's less emphasis on becomes a substitute for actually hearing it as it's happening in real time.
That's like Tom Waits said, the best music doesn't want to be recorded.
Well, I know Yeats was speaking to a peasant in Ireland. He said, the best music is whatever happens. That's what he said.
Wow. Is whatever happens. That's really good. And you're spelling Yates W-A-T-E-S?
No.
It's W-E-A-T-S?
Y-E-A-T-S, yeah.
Yeah. Why
Francis Yates. Yeah,
but are they pronounced the exact same? I always get this confused.
Well, that's actually a joke that Joyce makes when I think the Richard Best in the library gets, Yeats says, Keats says, whether it's a long E or a long A, but definitely Yeats is even though it's EA, it's pronounced with an A.
Okay,
A.
Yates is pronounced with the A, and then how do you pronounce Yates?
Yates? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess Waits.
Yeah.
Weights. I pronounce, and Tom Waits is Waits, right? So.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I didn't know about that Joyce joke. Is that in Finnegan's Wake or?
No, it's in the library chapter of the ninth chapter of Ulysses, which it's odd. He makes fun of the of Richard Best, he's kind of presented as a young ephebe who's hinting that he's kind of a boy toy for the older scholar, but in Robert Graves' The White Goddess, he cites an article on the raven dove motif in Irish history, which goes all through the wake, but it's written by Richard Best, who appears in Ulysses. So it's an odd.
Right. So McLuhan said something too. I'd love to hear how you interpret. It doesn't matter if you guess what McLuhan's trying to say, but how do you feel about these words? Everybody experiences far more than they understand, yet it is experience rather than understanding that influences behavior.
Well, I don't know. I mean, isn't how you understand your experience? Doesn't that create your behavior?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because the way I sort of suss that out is when your kid comes in from the cold and they want to warm their hands up, you tell them, don't touch the stove. That's experience. But if you go, let me teach you the dynamics of heat, you can get your hands really close to the stove, rub them together, and get your hands warm. That's called understanding. So I think we operate more on experience shaping our behavior, and we should operate more on understanding.
Yeah, well, in that way, that's like Pavlovian conditioning. You react to things rather than acting because of pain or maybe then you would come to associate. You would be afraid of stoves for the rest of your life, even when they're not when they're not on, because you burned yourself.
Right. And then sometimes people insist, well, I want to make my own mistakes. Don't control me. There's that phenomenon too. So Roy, are you more afraid of old ideas or more afraid of new ideas?
Are you assuming I'm afraid of ideas? Yeah. Well, there's certain old ideas certainly that I think are frightening. Religious autocracy, fascism. Usually ways of dominating other people and brainwashing other people, and it's an old. I think Joyce is an interesting example because I think he definitely was a combination of old ideas and forward-looking ideas. That part of his mind really was medieval in a way. He absorbed and kind of was nostalgic for that culture, but he was also a modernist. Who was one iconoclast.
Yeah, it's like that line: our pastimes are our pastimes.
Yeah, yes, that's right. But I think that there's another thing where he looked to far off times which a pun on Pharaoh, and I guess the enslavement of the Jews by Pharaoh, the Pharaoh of times. But then he also looked into futurism. I guess futurism was a big thing in the 20s. Yeah, nothing ages more quickly than a word like futurism, though. Yeah.
As Marshall said, the future ain't what it used to be.
Yeah, Back to the Future.
But he also said, the future of the future is the present,
Mm-hmm.
which is an interesting flip too. But I think he really was knowing how much Wyndham Lewis was the hidden ground to Finnegan's Wake in a lot of ways. And Wyndham Lewis said the artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future.
Mm-hmm. But he was also the great adversary, and I mean, he was like the Buck Mulligan character in For the Wake. But he was the proponent. He was the eye man, where who merges with Sean, whereas Shem is the ear man.
You mean Wyndham is the eye man? He's Sean.
Yeah. A lot of Sean is taken from especially Time in Western Man, where Wyndham Lewis attacked Joyce for his time, being a kind of seduced by the time philosophies of the age, by him, especially Bergson.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you. So can you conjure up your earliest memory ever, or one of them?
It's weird. I do, I have a memory of, I think it's one of my earliest memories of being in a crib, and my grandfather, or actually it's my step grandfather on my mother's side, was sleeping, and I was trying to get his attention, and he said, "Shut up." And my mother claims that couldn't have happened because he never slept in the room, but I that was always an old memory of mine.
That's great. And so, do you think, Roy, memory is more a curse or more a blessing?
God, well, it's there has to be a word for blurst, a curse and a blessing.
That is good. And blessing is blurst.
Well, I didn't make that up. That's on Reddit. You can see this. There are all these.
I didn't know that because one of my favorite. I think Joyce summarizes Finnegan's Wake so well in one word. Like mine is laugh tears. I mean, that is the human condition. And the amazing thing about laugh tears, most people don't realize he took the letter A and the letter S and inserted it in the word laughter. So as is metaphor. When you say as, and that's what all language is metaphor. So besides saying you laugh and you cry, that's the human condition, it's a little deeper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we do you like Wallace Stevens? He talks about the intricate evasions of as. That's one of my favorite lines from Wallace Stevens.
The intricate what of it?
The intricate evasions of as.
What does he mean by that?
Well, I think what you're talking about, as being metaphorical, something is like something, or something is, and he's always playing the difference between is and as. But the intricate evasions of as, we don't, we tend to see the appearances or the comparing something to something rather than experiencing it as itself.
Yeah, that's deep. Thank you. So, can you tell me I know what I was going to say. The fun one, if you have any favorite words that summarize the wake in one word. The other one I like is cropsy, CROPSE. It's crop and corpse.
Right.
So the growth and the death. So in the thinking of, while we're talking, if you think of any, I always like to hear the wake reduced down to one word.
Well, that's a tough one, but yeah.
Well, there's another one that's fun. It's where he blends crossword puzzle and Christmas present.
Yeah. Well, he also talks about the wake as a crossroads puzzler. The roads crisscrossing and intersecting in different ways, but
it's also like you could do a whole session on the wake in one word, and then the wake in two words, and then the wake in three words.
Well, how about Baba Dalgarak Takaminarankan Brantanaran Thuntrovar Haunonskon Huhu Ordnan Thernuk. That's the first thunder word. Yeah.
That's that the first thunder word is 9/11. If you see on page 1, it says Wall Street. It says, there's several direct references, and how you memorize that was astounding, because that's all you have to say for 9/11. It's like when Irish TV News was broadcasting the footage of 9/11 buildings collapsing. They scrolled on the bottom of the news picture, "This is not a Hollywood movie."
That was definitely surreal. Everything became unreal that day.
So tell me, within your immediate family and then outside your immediate family, one person who was a role model or had an impact on you, and just briefly, what was that impact?
Let's see. My father had a big impact. Well, in a way, I was not able to emulate some of the things he was, because he was a really good golfer, like almost a scratch golfer, and I could never play golf. But he made his own way. He started his own company, and he didn't want to work for anybody, so he was his own boss, and so I admired that. And he was also very funny.
And so someone outside your immediate family who had an impact on you, and what was the impact?
Well, actually, one of my best friends, who actually, he got me both. He kind of got me into Joyce, and he got me into music, because and so he impacted my life and also some of my favorite books he introduced me to as well.
Well, tell us, what age was he introducing Joyce to you about?
It's very odd, because he got into Joyce when he was maybe 15 or 16, and actually I remember once there was thunder, and he was wondering if there were going to be 7 thunders to match Finnegan's Wake. And I said, what is he talking about? And I got to look into this stuff here.
Well, you mean you started exploring Joyce at around age 15?
No, I didn't. Actually, I do remember thinking that I wasn't into, that Ulysses was just too hard for me to read, and I remember. I think I was either in 11th grade or 12th grade, but when I remember waking up and thinking, if I read it really, really slowly, maybe I can start understanding a little bit of it. And I think that Joyce has had a terrible effect on me. I'm such a slow reader.
But you mean he's starting to mention it to you at age 15, and then you're starting soon afterwards to at least attempt to start reading it.
Yeah, yeah, and and I mean, I knew the beginning of some musical. I think I knew the beginning from.
But you weren't doing it because your teachers were requiring it. You
No,
were
no,
no, yeah.
no.
What music was he turning you on to?
Well, he's a musician, and sometimes we would just improvise, and we would uh, write songs, and then he would accompany me, or I would accompany him, and things like that, as a way of expressing ourselves.
Right, but I mean, what were you listening to then when you
Well,
first?
I was, I think, I remember listening to, I remember, when I was maybe eight, I discovered radio, and I still remember what was the number one and the number two song at the time, and yeah, but it was great, coming to consciousness when the of musical consciousness when the British invasion with all those fantastic English groups, and then the psychedelic and Hendrix and all those
Yeah.
explosions. It just seemed just kept going and going. Amazing things happening all the time in music.
What's the function of music?
Well, I think Nietzsche said, "Without music, life would be a mistake." So that was.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's one of the great gifts. I don't know, that.
Is what's more fundamental, language or music?
Well, I mean, it is. They're both. I mean, language. It is a language, music, but yeah, I don't think there's one answer to that. I think for some people it's experiencing things through sounds or through concepts or through it's.
Well, it's funny. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, McLuhan has an interesting thought, and I'm curious your thoughts on it. Song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical tastes is ultimately connected to language difference.
Slow down speech. Well, that's odd. I mean, do you know Vico's theory of language? Well, he had that people who stuttered or who could not speak coherently were able to sing. They were able to sing their thoughts, and so they kind of bypassed the slowness of speech through singing. But stuttering. I don't know why that was such a stuttering and stammering such a big theme in the wake, and I guess Joyce and a lot of other people see that as at the origins of language, and there were a lot of people who stuttered, like Lewis Carroll and Parnell stuttered, who become figures in the wake.
Oh, wow. They were stutterers. Yeah. Well, so was Biden. And Biden's, Biden said his favorite poet is James Joyce. He owns this rare copy of The Wake or something.
Wow. That's that. Well, yeah. The story of Demosthenes. Yeah. The great Greek orator. So supposedly, I think he stuttered really badly, so he taught himself to speak by putting stones in his mouth, and then he would force him to speak. I guess he built up his speaking muscles and became one of the great orators.
Wow. Well, there's a cliche I love to repeat: is if you can't say it, sing it. If you can't sing it, dance it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we had a remarkable meeting the other night. Connor Perry was attending, and we went around and asked people if there was no writing then what? You know, if there was never writing in the world, like no printed word, what would happen?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and he said people would dance. I thought that was a remarkable, answer.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's a famous Plato dialogue where they tell the story about how Thoth invented writing, and
Who invented writing?
so the god, the Egyptian god Thoth, Thoth,
He
and
invented writing. He invented printed word.
no, this is way before printing, but he invented writing, and he went to the god Ammon. He was very proud of his invention, and Ammon said, "This is a terrible mistake. Don't do this. This is going to destroy people's memories. You know, they're going to be tedious, and this is just a bad idea. Writing. Of course, we wouldn't know that story unless Plato had written it down. So."
That's good. Yeah, well, that's an evidently real hidden psychic effect of printed word, that it stopped us from embellishing things, stories with our imagination, and it turned us into robots to repeat. So I just give people a Xerox than saying it. But did your parents raise you a particular religion?
I'm Jewish, but we were Reformed Jews, and really, I really, I don't consider myself a. I'm not a practicing Jew. I feel like I'm Jewish in a certain way, culturally and a lot of
culturally. Do you pray?
Sometimes when things get, it's weird. I mean, there's certain Psalms I sometimes read when things get, when I'm just feeling at the end of my rope.
If God does go ahead.
I've had this argument. I don't feel like the question of whether there is a God or whether God listens to you or that I feel like I went through a period of that being an important idea for me, but I'll pass.
No, that's good. You said, but if God does exist, what would you want God to tell you after you die?
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is that I don't think I think if God, my idea of God would not be a person who's there talking to you. I mean, there's. I mean, I believe in science and all that, but I also I feel like the idea that molecules just got together randomly and created amino acids and then went from there, and it just isn't. There's something unsatisfying, which is not a scientific or even particularly rational thought. I don't know, but but it's odd, I mean, it's too bad that the idea of God has become associated with so much thought control and mind control, and I mean, I've been thinking actually. I've been writing an article on purification rituals in Joyce. This. I mean, Joyce. Stephen Dedalus in a portrait. He is frightened out of his wits by these visions of hell and the idea that he is sinful and impure and he needs to do something to make it right with God, and he's terrorized into that. And so that's certainly not my idea of God, though.
Yeah. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I think evil people exist.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if it comes down to, I mean, I think some people really make the choice, you know. And,
Yeah. So how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? This one I'm going to set up with a few modern thinkers' thoughts. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to the Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I'm not sure I understand it completely. You mean acknowledge that they are an enemy, or that they exist, or that you have an enemy?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because you're like truly in the Irish tradition. You're answering a question with a question. It's like, again, yeah, am I? It's like, and that's fine. I mean, that's what this series is all about, is inventing new questions. But it's like, some people go, well, no, if you don't acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. So it's just like, how the basic question is how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, I had this argument about how January 6th, the response to January 6th, and I have a friend who said, well, they should have shot everybody. They should have. That's sent a message, and the people they're guilty of treason, and now they should be put to death for treason. I said, no, you don't. That sounds like a really bad idea to me.
Yeah.
But you can't. You can't just, I think, surrender to that either. You have to. You have to. Yeah, I feel like you need to be prepared. I mean, I guess classic example. The appeasement of Hitler was that. And I think Neville Chamberlain said, this is something Jung said. He said, "I have no imagination of evil," and that. So in a way, he could not imagine Hitler's evil. And put up no resistance to that.
Wow, that's what Jung said that?
Well, I remember, there's Jung talks about the importance of having the imagination of evil, because without it, you're at the mercy of evil.
Yeah. That's good. Thank you. So James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin over 100 years ago, Volta Cinema. He checked out. He said, basically, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later,
Faulkner. No.
Yeah, well, I have to put the word allegedly, but I heard it somewhere. But basically, Faulkner said years later, the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we recreate or reproduce things in order to get them? Why do we go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I mean, there's I think it's hard to express emotion honestly and forcefully, and it seems like some people are just so good at doing that. Like certain movies, where certain performances in movies, I feel like they can teach you to be human in a way when you see them perform. What was it? Who said art is a lie that helps us see the truth? I guess that's Picasso.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, what you said also is like Andy Warhol said, movies taught us everything. They taught us how to litter, how to kiss, how to respond when we get kissed, how to drive a car, how to do everything, you know. It is it's maybe the more basic question is, what was the motive of the cave artist? Not what anthropologist or Herzog necessarily said in his movie, but just your hunch or your impulse. What was the motive of the cave artist?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I always thought it had something to do with creating rituals that were going to allow them to survive by hunting and knowing where the animals were and being taught certain rudiments of hunting that their lives depended on doing that, successfully. They couldn't go to the supermarket. They had no margin for error there. So.
Yeah. What do you think at some point artists felt they had to have a moral obligation, and do artists have a moral obligation?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess that's it's hard, I think, because when you feel like an artist has a message, that seems like that automatically degrades the work of art itself. I mean, there have been periods where I guess art was considered, the allegorical tradition of, dispensing the truth and fighting sin and conquering your enemies and being a noble person, or what, like in the Fairy Queen. But I guess, it seems like the modern sensibility is against this idea of being didactic, of having some kind of moral agenda, and that it's better to not to falsify reality to get across a moral point, but to actually render things, and that in itself does a service. Even an evil character, if it's well realized, I think it's more positive than a good character that's trite and hackneyed.
Right. It's interesting to me always that John Waters, the movie director, cheered and rooted for the Wicked Witch of the West. When we were all doing it, was that wrong of him? Was he, was he misinterpreting? So, Roy, you've studied Finnegan's Wake for years. What do you think Joyce's motive was to write Finnegan's Wake?
Wow. I think he it seems like, he really, if you look at Ulysses, I mean, he really had exhausted all these different forms of language, parody and rhetoric and aesthetic, the fin de siècle aestheticism. I don't know, where was he going to go after that? And it seems like, his sense of language was so highly developed that he just wanted to create his own rules.
Right. So, what percentage of the Wake? You're a scholar I look up to. You've studied the Wake. What percentage of the Wake do you think you get? Like 30, 50, 60?
Yeah, I sometimes wonder that. It's definitely less than Yes, I don't know. Well, I mean, the thing that I like about the wake is that I feel, there's always, it seems like every time, if you're in the right frame of mind, there's always something new to discover. And, and I mean, a lot of it is creating contexts, to understand what he's saying. Like, if which you only have a certain amount of time, so only a certain number of contexts you can create in your life. So I mean, I was thinking, well, if I just read all of Balzac now, maybe that would increase my understanding of what Joyce was doing. But that would take me.
Right. I mean, you've read a lot. Just in general, would you say 30-ish, 60-ish, or 80%? What do you get of the wake?
Oh, maybe 30. But
what do you think Joyce got of the wake? How much did he understand the wake?
Well, he said, I can justify every line. So I think he knew. I knew what he was doing. There was. God, what's this book that a doctor looks at literature that is someone that knew Joyce knew, and he puts him in the wake. He kind of makes fun of him in the wake, but he has a chapter on Joyce where he says, Joyce was kind of like a medium who was writing down things without the interference of his conscious mind. And I think that's Joyce would not have agreed with that. I think, and he, he says, people talk about the unconscious. What do they know about the conscious? But he does write a lot about mediums. I think he was fascinated by the whole phenomenon of mediums and the whole Freudian idea of most of ourselves is unconscious. Ourselves are unconscious, and so
Even George Lakoff, contemporary neuroscientist, says we're operating on a really small percentage of conscious.
Right, but in terms of I don't, Joyce always contradicted himself with whatever he said. You can find something that he contradicts himself. So, I mean, Sean talks about, there's a strong tendency in me to make me the medium, but he's got the what he calls the sludge hammer, which is reference to this a poem by Robert Browning about a medium, famous medium that he made fun of.
You mean Robert Browning made fun of a medium?
Yeah, Daniel Hone. He was like the most famous medium in England, and Elizabeth Barrett Browning was a believer in mediums. I think Browning even went to some seances, but he was convinced that he was a fraud, and so he wrote. This Browning did a lot of confessional poems. The person who's been a fraud their whole life finally confesses the truth about their lives.
How do you spell Daniel's last name?
Hone. I think it's Hone. Daniel Hone. I'm not. But if you look at Mr. Sludge, the medium, they would tell you who it's based on. I think it's Daniel Hone. He was known for supposedly he levitated out the window and came in another window, and he created a big sensation.
And then Joyce made fun of Browning, making fun of art.
Well, he has it's like Sean has a tendency towards being a medium, but it's like he when he talks about a sludge hammer, I'm not sure if he means that he's able to keep these voices in check. I mean, I guess there was a connection between mediums and split personalities. And Joyce was certainly afraid that Lucia was a split personality.
Yeah.
And she had certain kind of mediumistic tendencies that he was very connected to.
Yeah. Well, this funny thing, and my friend Bob Dobbs was attending the New York Finnegan's Wake Reading Club, and it's one of the people there taught him, I think, said this, that Joyce, Nora was okay if Joyce went and saw prostitutes, but if he went and saw a medium, that would piss her off. Have you ever heard that?
No.
We had a hardcore Wakeian leave our meeting once saying, that's bullshit. I goes, I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying I heard it, and it made you laugh because it sounds like it could be feasible, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it's weird. Yeah, the whole thing with Joyce and hookers is I mean, it's fascinating because I always thought reading a portrait, Stephen does seem kind of prudish in he comes off that way, and yet he's someone who's like seeing hookers from when he's like 13 or 14 years old. He's regularly going to Nighttown, and Dublin was really a split personality. I mean, you had the English, the Catholic Church, which was controlling the Catholics. Joyce even called it black magic. That was one of his words for the way Catholic Church brainwashed and controlled people. And also you had the English, but then because of the English occupation, they also had the biggest Nighttown, hooker red light district in all of Europe, because they had to try to keep the English soldiers happy. so
that's where was this where Joyce actually called the Catholic Church black magic? Where was
that? That's in Elman. I remember, someone asked him the opinion of, and it's weird because, he continued to, attend the rituals, and, he almost, became a priest according to a portrait. And I guess, and he was very deeply engaged with the Catholic religion, but I think he really came to see it as an evil force.
Yeah, there's a lot of crossover what you just taught me, Roy. I really appreciate it. Richard Ellman, I just found out, was born on my birthday, March 15th, and he's from Michigan, where I'm from. So I have direct connection with Richard.
I was born on Shakespeare's birthday, so.
Hey, that is pretty hot, dude. You know what Shakespeare stands for? Shake your ESP ear.
Yeah.
Shake ESP ear. So there's that's sense ratio shifting full blast. But really, what you did teaching me that Joyce called the Catholic Church a black magic, then McLuhan said that the Finnegan's Wake was the Black Mass.
Well, there is a Black Mass in Circe in the Nighttown chapter. They do perform a Black Mass where they say the name of God backwards, and it's actually quite obscene. I think that Mulligan appears with a carrot stuck up his ass in this black mass ritual. Yeah.
Wow. But let's go back for a second, Roy. When you were talking about conscious, I would like you to tell me how you differentiate between the word conscious and consciousness. But if you can, put it into into the context of a McLuhan question. He just asked, how about technologies as the collective unconscious and art as the collective unconsciousness? So he's trying to make a distinguish thing between technologies and art, and he's putting the word "un" in front of conscious and consciousness. So he's saying technologies are collective unconscious, art is collective unconsciousness. Now he's not saying they are, he's saying how about. But how would you differentiate, if you could, what is he trying to differentiate between technology and art with the word conscious and consciousness?
Oh boy. Yeah. I mean, I tend to think. I mean, the technology as a certain unconscious force.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. I mean, it seems to me once it's like, you set the robot going, and then it doesn't need reflection or consciousness or thought. It just the wheels, the cog wheels, to keep turning no matter what. But I don't know why art would be unconsciousness, or is it a way of making conscious what is unconscious, or is a way of I'm not sure if I get what he's saying there.
Well, if you just said, all that aside, what's the difference between conscious and consciousness?
Yeah, well, one's you can be conscious, I guess. Well, consciousness is, that then you make a thing of it. I don't even know if that's valid. That it's actually is it an abstract thing? Consciousness I guess that's isn't that the goal of the yogis, to be able to experience pure consciousness, without being conscious of anything.
Yeah. That's pretty remarkable, because it reflects another line McLuhan would say: the Balinese have no word for art. They do everything as well as they can.
Yeah.
I mean, how conscious are they, making a basket or eating food or, walking down the road? I mean, they just do things. They don't go, well, I'm a tightrope walker. I have an art form. Give me money. I'll entertain you. Do you think? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I guess the difference between wanting to create a work of art or be a work of art.
Yeah, create or be it. Yeah. Do you think part of Joyce's motive was to make money as an author, as a legit writer?
No. I mean, yeah, definitely not. I think it's weird. He was a very litigious person. He was, he didn't like the idea of being ripped off by Rosenbach, and it seemed like he was jealous of Picasso. Like Picasso could go in and make a doodle on the napkin, and it would be worth all this money. I think he definitely was not economically motivated.
Because, Frank Zappa said, I'm just writing this music for myself, and if other people like it, great. And to me, Frank was over romanticizing with that statement. I mean, he was truly a guy who didn't kiss up to the man and had, made art the way he wanted to, but he lived in a society that was consumer, that was capitalism. He at one point even said, I'm a devout capitalist. But I think Joyce lived in a world where you write books and then you sell them. So he could never escape that was part of the process,
Yeah. Well, so just getting Dubliners published, where he refused. He living in poverty. He desperately, and he had a family, and he desperately needed money, and yet he said, "Oh, I'm not going to take the word bloody out of the story," and so it wasn't, that delayed the publication for 10 years. So he wasn't, so he wasn't going to.
That's totally Paul Schrader, the writer of Taxi Driver. He said the role of the artist is to attempt to sell out but fail.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think he knew he didn't expect Ulysses to really be a bestseller, and certainly when he's writing The Wake for like 17 years, and everybody's telling him that this is a horrible mistake you're making. You're wasting your life. You're wasting your time. Or as Nora said, I can only get three words out of him a day with that chop suey he's writing.
Well, a screenwriting teacher told me a great art or a great film is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think that's what I mean, like indicating your intention, I think is always intrusive, it seems like there's a connection between that and what Joyce talks about, the artist refining himself out of existence. So in a way, he doesn't. He's no longer something standing outside the art, manipulating it, but kind of absorbed into every fiber of it.
And where does he say that?
Stephen says that the artist is refined out of existence and is standing behind, paring his fingernails, and.
Oh, right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, what role does intention play in your creative process when you publish articles about Joyce?
Yeah, well, I mean, usually I when I start out, I really don't like to know where I'm going with things. And things start to congeal. But I feel like, by the time I get to the end of it, I do have to have a strong sense of what my intention is, or what, how, I mean, and I think, writing an article is much different from the creative process of writing of an artwork, though.
But are you also a songwriter, a poet, or a novelist? Is there any art forms that you've pursued?
Songwriting is something that I've pursued, and I would say, when I first got into it, I did think of it more as I'm trying to connect with some part of myself that I've lost touch with, or something of that nature, that things I can't express in normal life. I want to be able to express in a song, So, but I feel like I'm not so much these days,
But Roy, in twofold, Duchamp says there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your audience when you're writing a song? And how much are you thinking of your readers when you're writing an essay on Joyce?
Mm-hmm. Well, I definitely think of my readers more than I think of songs. And I did go through a period where I realized I was not going to be a rock star. I used to go to open mics, and I think you have to have a certain you really have to get it charged up by the stage to be successful in that, and so in that sense, I don't really feel like I think so much in terms of an audience here with music. I like the way I like the way certain sounds go together and the way certain words go together and things like that. Yeah.
Well, if whoever your favorite music critic essayist is, Grail Marcus or Nat Hedtoff, whoever wrote a review of your music or your song and they praised it and they said Roy's songs sound like a cross between who and who would you feel honored if they said that?
Well, that's obvious. Yeah, I mean, of course. Well, Dylan is of course the ultimate, and God, there's so many. But I like I like the songs supposed to be kind of quirky and peculiar. I don't really want to sound. I mean, I wouldn't want to try to sound like Dylan, or I would want to sound like Pink Floyd.
How about this? A cross between Tom Lehrer and Bob Dylan?
Okay. Well,
okay.
Yeah, who did Alan Sherman? Hello, Mother, Head of Father, and
he's one of my heroes. I love that guy. Okay, so George Magnapelli started the Ann Arbor Film Festival 60 years ago. His mantra is "Ignore yourself." Jonas Mekas, great experimental filmmaker right there in New York, said there is no self-expression. And Cecil Taylor, avant-garde jazz pianist, says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. Is art making, novel writing, music making more self-expression or more they're vehicles for whatever technology or culture is dominant? I know it's both, and it's, especially in thinking in Joyce's terms. Is he just a vehicle or is it self-expression? Which one more?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is what we're talking about. If you think of yourself as a medium, then you are a vehicle, and I think that there was. I mean, I know Virginia Woolf thought of herself as a medium.
Did she really?
That was almost like channeling the words. But I think I think somebody in a portrait, he talks about how it's almost like he held the English language at arm's length, like he didn't fully inhabit it. He was more comfortable parodying styles of the English language than of expressing himself. And if you're going to parody something, then that's a very conscious act. Whereas if you're a medium, then you just surrender to some force.
Yeah. Can art making be egoless?
Well, I suppose. I mean, I think I think Joyce was a tremendous egoist. He was. As Stanislaus talks about. I mean, a lot of people talk about his egoism. And Shem they talk about himself self-exiled upon his ego in the wake. But then there's here comes everybody. HC where you're not just your ego. You're like, and he even said, well, it's not me. Well, yeah, it's not me who's writing this book. It's that person over there, and that where the woman's eating over there, and that person. So I don't know.
Yeah, for years I've been asking that, and someone finally said, "Great art is egoless," which is sort of funny paradox, because how does universality become dominant in the consuming of art? Because no matter what it does, why does it touch so many people? Like when we were growing up in the 60s listening to transistor radio, we would hear these amazing songs like "Oh Happy Day" or "Louie Louie." became anthems for the entire country.
Mhm.
And so, how did that happen? There was some universality it was touching on.
Yeah, well, it definitely seemed like yeah, there was that cross fertilization and it. But there were also those great musicians. They were also great egoists and egotists.
Yeah.
Uh,
What's more important, conviction or compromise?
Gee, in a marriage, maybe compromise.
You put it in context well.
But I think that. Yeah,
go ahead.
No, I think they're both important. Yeah.
Yeah. Is perception reality?
Yes. Had to think about it, but
T.S. Eliot said that poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Inner dialogue. Yeah, it's definitely English. My inner dialogue.
What form is your inner consciousness in?
It's hard to say. It's yeah. Well, I guess the real inner consciousness is the dream self. And I feel like I go through periods where I feel like I'm connected, or I do have interesting and almost scary dreams where it's almost like I feel too open, and then I go through periods where I hardly dream. Yeah, I'm not sure what that real inner self is.
Yeah, you must have ESP there, Roy, because I usually don't ask this question, but McLuhan probed Finnegan's Wake by saying artists dream awake. He wasn't being elitist, but he's saying everyone has this power to create these scenarios while they sleep, but artists can create those kind of dreamlike scenarios while they're awake. So they're dreaming awake.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I wrote an article on noise in the wake.
Yeah.
And he had a theory that any noise that you hear, because you can close your eyes, but you can't close your ears when you're asleep.
Yeah.
So any noise you hear through your ears is automatically turned into a dream, or becomes a dream. And
you said that, or Joyce said that?
No, Joyce said that. Yeah. And
where did he say that?
Where did he say that? It's in Ellman somewhere.
Okay, in Ellman. So go ahead.
But there's a scene in The Wake where this someone is knocking on the door of I think his name is Morris Bean, and he calls it the Norse of guns. The noise and kind of the attack of the Norsemen, but also he hears the Ragnarok, the Norse end of the world. So in a way, it's a very innocuous noise, but his dream self turns it into this apocalyptic scenario.
That's deep. Yeah. Yeah, I wrote a big essay on silence. I'd love to trade off. You send me your noise article, and I'll send you my silence article, and we'll see where the twain meet.
Yes.
Yeah, Thelonious Monk said silence is the loudest sound in the universe.
Well, he would know, man.
So another person you brought up earlier I'm fond of is Lewis Carroll. He said, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I think about that. I think it's the White Queen says, I believe 6 impossible things before breakfast. but I do think about that line a lot. But I tend to think of it more in terms of my younger self. When I was in my 20s, I was really into the occult. I used to frequent, Samuel Weiser's bookstore and the I Ching, and forms of divination, and did you say you knew Robert Anton Wilson?
No, I didn't know him personally. I mean, I might have talked to him once or twice, but I think he's the greatest Groucho Marxist we ever had, probably.
Yeah, he's funny, and he's but the whole 23 thing had this this mystical. And I really believed it for a while, but it did seem like believing it caused things to happen.
Totally. Jim Carrey's movie 23 came out on the day Robert Anton Wilson died.
I didn't. You mentioned that. I'm sure if he saw it, he would have died again.
Died laughing.
But yeah, I had high hopes for that. But I never saw that movie. But
no, I didn't see it.
But it would be I think someone should do a movie that really got. But I did have one strange experience with the number 23. This is one of my favorite synchronicities.
Yeah.
Where a friend of mine who's a comic book artist, his name is Sandy Plunkett. We were both into that, the trilogy, Illuminati trilogy at the same time, and he was contemplating writing a graphic novel based on the Mask of the Red Death.
Yeah.
Poe's story.
Yeah.
And he described it to me, and then we threw an I Ching, and the I Ching came up number 23. And we're saying, this is not, and it had the exact same words that he had just used in describing his graphic novel. And the 23rd hexagram or whatever it is called Poe, P-O.
Wow. Well, I think it's easily explained by two people who are very conscious of Joyce. One was Marshall McLuhan. He called that complex clairvoyance. And the other one was Frank Zappa. He called that conceptual continuity. So there's a thread running through everything. And it's just a question of how good are you at connecting it, or aware, or how open are you at, recognizing patterns, So go ahead.
Well, if you're asking me, what my motivation is in writing music, because I don't think I'm not someone. I don't feel like. I mean, in my very young days, I wanted to be famous, but that's not something I really desire or think of as or maybe that was one of the 6 impossible things I believed in, But the idea of trying to connect with that, what you just said, the continuity of the
conceptual continuity.
Conceptual continuity with and it has a lot to do with pattern recognition. It seems like
Yeah, and pattern recognition leads to comprehensive awareness, the big picture. I mean, Marshall just was like Zappa. They just got their lines from advertising, I mean, that's why Tim Leary got his slogan from Marshall McLuhan: turn on, tune in, and drop out.
That's from that McLuhan said that?
He helped inspired or prompted him or encouraged. You can read it in Leary's book. He gives Marshall credit, And then, Sun Ra nailed it. He said, the impossible attracts me because everything possible has been done and the world didn't change. Boy, tell me one major element of your Joyce studies that stayed the same and one that's changed.
Yeah, what has changed? That's a good question, because I just feel like, yeah, the wake is definitely all about pattern recognition, so it seems like the more, it's almost like the more you can recognize, that enables you to recognize more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
Well, that's.
I mean, I think I was much more literal minded about, or certain things really, that seem significant to me, just to make any connection, at all, or to,
Yeah.
Uh,
So, Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness that you've turned into a strength.
Well, it is weird, because I would say, I hated reading. I don't know. I spent my whole life reading, but as a child, I hated reading. I hated the whole, being forced to read in school, and things like that. There's I mean, my wife, she can like gallop through novels, and she's like a natural reader, but I don't feel like I'm a natural reader, and so something about being pain, you have to take everything so painstaking with Joyce. You in a way, it's not like gathering momentum like in a novel. You have to be able to do it fast enough so it's like a movie, so that you're experiencing in time. But in Joyce, for me, it's almost like the opposite. I want to get stuck somewhere, and
it reverberates with that little story where somebody asks Joyce, "How's it going?" And he goes, "Well, I got 12 words I've been working on for a week." And he goes, "Well, what's taking you so long?" He says, "I'm trying to get them in the right order."
Not the mo juice, but the mo order. He's well. I think Flaubert had him beaten. I said, I spent a week working on, and I ended up I took out a comma, and then I put it back. I put it back the next week.
That's good. I didn't know that one. And then he put it back in. That is good. So, Swift compared satire to a mirror in which people could see every face but their own. Can satire be destructive?
Yeah, sure. I guess that's the purpose of its purpose. It seems to be is destructive. Maybe some things should be destroyed, but
well, there's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions, but Roy, you got that one right.
Well, I should say, actually, one reason I like Joyce is that things that I initially reacted to emotionally or positively, then I finally realized Joyce is satirizing. He's making fun of, so he's making fun of me, too. Like when AE in the library talks about, art must connect us to the mother Earth. I can't remember the exact words, but it was a very kind of 60s thing, back to nature, so I initially thought of it as I didn't realize that that Joyce is really making fun of everybody.
That is good. In AE is the character in which book?
Well, AE was the great mystic. He was a friend of Yeats with EATS, and they were both theosophy, influenced by theosophy, and his name was George Russell.
George Russell,
but he called himself AE for Aeon, which is the Gnostic idea of the eons, maybe like the yugas. I'm not sure, but he appears a few times in Ulysses, and he's in the library.
Where is he saying art connects you to Mother Nature? Joyce is writing about Eon, AE.
Well, he's one of the characters. Like they were all kind of in the library. Stephen is giving his theory about Shakespeare, and he's surrounded by John Eglinton, who was the scholar, the scholar, and AE is the mystic, and Richard Best, he talks about AE oracling out of his shadow, this kind of super profound, and kind of, he I think he disapproves of Stephen as a kind of city-bred decadent, who's not connected to the oversoul or the, but he appears. Bloom runs into AE, passes him on the street, and then he appears in Circe as a hallucination. But he's.
That's like Zappa making fun of hippies, even though he was part of creating the freak scene in LA. No one was making fun of the hippies, I mean, that were a hippie, but Frank had the balls to do that. But sometimes people misinterpret it in a way you were like, well, that's who I am. And then, that's really amazing about satire. Is the thing that you brought up that's really great is also a connection with Zappa. He reverently satirized what he loved the most. Well, so I think Joyce is close to that.
Yeah, no, that describes Joyce perfectly. Yeah,
and this goes to this next thing. You create what you resist. That's a term, a word that's words that have been created. Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, morphed it into "you are what you hate." But Joyce said it's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve. And then Louis Buñuel said, "Thank God I'm an atheist." So what do you think of this? You create what you resist. What's your just reflection on those words?
Well, yeah, I mean, in the library, Joyce is making fun of not just AE but theosophy. He thinks of Madame Blavatsky and that whole crowd that Yeats was a part of, and he appears to have great satirical contempt for the whole idea of theosophy, and yet the Wake is super saturated with theosophy, and Isis Unveiled, and the Secret Doctrine. He rifled those things and use them as material.
Yeah. Roy, how do you find peace of mind?
Who said I found it?
If you were, go ahead.
It's elusive. I mean, being able to sometimes having just being in the right frame of mind. I guess if I'm kind of trying to train myself to write every morning, and sometimes it's a real drag. but then when it's working, and I realize I have the whole morning, and I feel like things are fitting together in the way I want them to. That gives me peace of mind.
I recommend the new late July issue of the New Yorker, 9 pages on Ishmael Reed. He said that writing can remedy the ills of the world, and I agree with you. When you can find that space or time to feel that you can write is really important. Yeah. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Don't take yourself so seriously.
Which way should toilet paper come off the roll? Over?
Definitely next to the wall. Yeah.
And why?
Because God meant it that way, obviously.
Finally, I got someone with a good answer. If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
Very. Maybe that would be the title.
That's a good title. They want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell?
Attar of the rose.
They want to color some of the type rather than just having it all black on white. What color would some of the type be?
Greenish blue.
If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed and what would it be made of?
I can't imagine a statue being made of me, so I'll pass on that one.
Roy, tell me something good you never had and you never want.
I never want? Or
yeah, it's good. You never had it, but you never want it.
See, there were, when I was in high school, there were a few girls I never had, but I can't say that I never wanted them though.
That's a good answer. Let's leave it at that. So if you were in a vat of vomit up your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you
do? Close my eyes.
Very good. Okay, so Joseph Beuys, you know this artist? He wrote an extra chapter to Finnegan's Wake.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, check him out sometime. He's got a line that goes, "Make the secrets productive." Lou Welsh is a beat poet and an ad man. He said, "Guard the secrets, constantly reveal them." But it was Thornton Wilder, a true Wakean at heart. 1928, he said, "Art is confession. Art is the secret told." But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. Mm-hmm. Roy, you laid your cards on the table for over 90 minutes, and I thank you. I'm grateful. I'm not insinuating you haven't answered this, but what's it really all about for you?
Well, I understand when John says, Yoko and me, and that's reality. It's me and my wife Lori, my son, and it's reading and discovering things. Keep discovering things with my mind. I like finding out things, researching things, and Joyce is like a great fun house that's filled with all these secret rooms that go in different directions, and that.
It's like one of those amusement park rides where you go in and the mirrors all distort.
Yeah, your fun house, lost in the fun house. I think somebody did that. Yeah.
Yeah, lost in the fun house. Okay, I'm going to ask you these 5 quick Alan Watts questions just in a couple words, and then we're going to bring Clinton in. Okay, so the first one is, Who started it all?
Eve, when she ate that apple.
Are we going to make it?
I have my doubts.
Where do we put it?
Where the sun don't shine.
Who's cleaning it up?
Ultimately, we all are.
Is it serious?
Yes and no.
That's good. That's like Zappa said, I'm serious about being not serious.
Yeah. Well, Josh has the word, you like laugh tears. I mean, he always liked, he also says serial cosmically, we have the connection to the serious and the comic, but also the serial universe.
Serial cosmically. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's in the way. Yeah. Okay. Well, Roy, this has been truly enlightening. I sure learned a lot. So Clinton, I know he's been listening. He's got a copy of Finnegan's Wake right back there on his shelf. So Clinton,
actually, I do. Yeah,
there you go.
Why don't we do a sortus wakia? Open at random.
Yeah, well, we can do that. But Clinton, what do you got? Because this guy surely offered us a lot, didn't he?
Yeah, I've got a general question just about. I was wondering what comes to mind from Joyce regarding labyrinths. Because McLuhan wrote a letter in '52 to Ezra Pound, basically saying, "It's taken me 30 years to figure out that you and Eliot and Joyce all use the labyrinth as a central metaphor, not for what you're saying, but for the form that your works take." And I was wondering how do you think labyrinths or the concepts of the labyrinths of the Cumaean gates are?
It's actually, and I did want to. I know you're obviously McLuhan-esque. He talks about the radio recreating the tribal, the tribal sense, and there's the radio broadcast that takes place in the bar, one of the chapters of Finnegan's Wake, where it starts off, tribal balbutience, which actually is a combination of the tribal and stuttering. Balbus means stuttering, but it's also it's awakening the ear world. That's what radio. I guess that's what radio does. But he has a phrase where he says the labyrinths of our ontological life, where he's punning on the word labyrinth. And ontological means the ear, but he's also punning on ontological, that the ear is the sense of of being, whereas I guess vice versa, the eye kind of diminishes being by objectifying and distancing us from reality. And he has a great description of the labyrinth of the inner ear. Of what happens to sound when it goes into the ear as a kind of labyrinth. But
perfect. That's great.
That was an amazing. You can do a follow-up, Clinton, if you want. You got it, something else, or did that one just blow you off the planet?
Yeah, I'll have to think about that. Thanks. That's a great lead.
Well, here's. I'll just do a follow-up. When he changes the word labyrinth, Roy, to lubricants, what is he doing there? What's the word lubricants? Yeah.
That's that's a good question. He does use the word lub, L-U-B, lubricant as in the sense of fat. I'm not sure how that fits in. Yeah, he talks about following the lub back, kind of the but yeah, I'm not. I
but
can't.
It could be lubricating, because when you have the ear wig, it can't move in and out unless there's some sort of goopy David Cronenberg kind of line from your video,
Video
an earwig couldn't move in dry land. It's got to be lubricated.
That's
So
horrible.
a labyrinth has to be lubricated. But the other thing is T.S. Eliot, which I don't think you brought up once, but I'm sure he's made an impact on you, Roy, too, is he had a huge impact on Joyce, on McLuhan, and he talked about auditory imagination. Have you ever tried to suss out what that means?
Yeah, I mean, since like poetry was all about auditory imagination, where the word, the line between the word and the image, and the shape of the word, well, Joyce says that's another one of those chiasmus is sound, sense, and sense, sound meet, in the meaning and just the physical sound of words.
Yeah, that's in the wake. Sound, sense, and sense, sound.
Yeah. Begin again to make sense sound, and sound sense kin again. I think that's the
right. Yeah, because it is funny. You brought up we were made, I think McLuhan says this, humans have eyelids, but they don't have earlids.
Yeah. Have earwigs, but not earlids.
Yeah. But there's one other thing about studying the function of poetry. Back to Eliot, he says, poetry can communicate before it's understood. I mean, that's the way. People, this guy Swerve of the Bay guy, Peter Criss, he's studied the wake like you for decades. And he's willing to go, you don't need all the academic breakdown to figure out what it means. It's just how it makes you feel. My wife and I, when we got married in Paoli, Indiana, when we decided to do it there, we were just happening to read the wake, and there was the word Paoli spelled exactly correct. And on that page, there's like 4 references to man and woman, wife and husband marrying. Now that's just coincidence or what?
Yeah, well, that's right. That's what was that phrase you used?
Well, McLuhan calls it complex clairvoyance.
Complex clairvoyance. That sounds good.
And then Zappa called it conceptual continuity. But here's the line, because Joyce was so, Poe spawned the symbolists. The symbolists spawned advertising Finnegan's Wake and all the rock poets, Dylan. Jim Morrison, Kurt Cobain, and Patti Smith, who loves Finnegan's Wake. But here's Leo Bersani's Mallarmé study. Says this one line that I'm always trying to figure out what it means. The very crises which threatens the writing of poetry sustains poetic composition. How does that resonate with you in the wake at all?
Yeah, that's a great line.
I mean, what is that?
Shall I? How can I, after teas and cake, will I, after teas and cakes and ices, have the strength to force the moment to its crisis? That's
the love song of Jeff.
Yeah, that's a love song.
Oh, that's proof rock.
Yeah. It seems like that's one reason I think Joyce was always living on the edge. He was like a nomad. I don't know how he did it with that huge library and family, but he I don't know how many times he changed residence, but I don't think he didn't want to be secure or tied down.
Yeah. So thanks a lot, Roy. This has been fun, and thank you, Clinton. And in closing, I just have a couple last questions. If you were at a dinner party with James Joyce right now, Roy, and you had a chance to ask him a question, what would you ask him?
I pass. I don't know.
That's good. What's the healthiest or most impactful cultural shift you see developing today?
I don't know. It's the most. I mean, I feel like it's like cable TV. Certain of these shows. It seems like they're freeing up these actors and writers in some kind of new way. That I don't know if that's cultural shift. Cultural shift. I think that the best cultural shift was not having Trump reelected. I don't know.
That's a good one. Okay, the last question, Roy. This has been super fun. Thank you. Again, I've learned so much. You're my hero. What gives you the most optimism?
I think it's having positive relationships with people. Connecting with someone's sense of humor.
Amazing. It resonates with when Groucho Marx was at the end of his rope in a public appearance, they asked him, what gives you the most optimism? That's where I got that question. He said other people, and he spent his life basically cutting down people. So it was really fun spending this time with you.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, and it was really nice talking to you.